Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Solar Astrology Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Amia.
And I'm Hamra. Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. This time around, we are recording on the 18th of December at 18:37 o'clock, European Standard Time. And
Yeah.
we are doing the Sagittarius episode today. Hello, guys. Welcome to the
Yeah.
Sagittarius episode.
With so much excitement, I feel like Sag vibes are definitely in the air, and it's a perfect moment to talk about the sign. I mean, Sag is a mutable sign, it's also a fire sign, and it's ruled by Jupiter. So I would say that is the perfect Christmas spirit that is visiting us in our homes.
Totally. And it's also actually the last fire sign that we're meeting. We are kind of completing the fire sign trio with Sagittarius.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And it's, as we said, it's actually ruled by Jupiter, and it's the first Jupiter ruled signs that we meet. And nothing is actually exalted in Sagittarius, and it's also the detriment of Mercury because Mercury and Jupiter are polarities, and we talked very deeply about this polarity, for example, in the Gemini episode. And so that is why Mercury is in detriment in the sign.
Yeah, and this episode around, since it's the first time that we have a Jupiter ruled sign, we will talk a bit more in depth about the planet Jupiter as well.
Yes. And also, if you want to divide the zodiacal season in actual seasons, if we take autumn, such as the last sign of autumn, and this is pretty common because all of the mutable sign are at the end of the season. And what does Jupiter represent? Well, Jupiter is the sign, Jupiter rules Sag, which is the sign before of the winter solstice. What happens in the winter solstice? Well, the days become longer again. So it's the return of the light. That's why actually we celebrate Christmas in the first place. So, Sagittarius is that beautiful spirit of excitement before that the light turns back. It's the transition between the dark that gets darker in autumn and the darkness then that becomes lighter, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It's really, I mean, it is also the only fire sign that is in the darker period of the year,
True.
since in the winter part, the other few signs that come, no sign is a fire sign again. And the astrological new year or the spring equinox starts with Aries again, and then we have Leo in summer. So Sagittarius really is like the fire of the winter fire. And that way it makes perfect sense that it's before Christmas. I mean, during Christmas season, the official Christmas is, in Capricorn. We're going to talk more about that in the next episode. But I'm also thinking of the Christmas lights that go on during that time, and all the people are chatting again, going out to the Christmas markets, buying stuff. It's really just when Scorpio season ends, when that usually starts. So we can see this big transition of coming together again after a very dark period of time, which is Scorpio, because Scorpio really is the dark of the dark. And then, like every last seasonal sign, the mutability comes in and it kind of moves the season along. It shifts it out of its gears. And that's really what Sag does. And it's so important during that dark time that we have a sign that brings in faith, that brings in hope, and
Yeah.
that brings in the light.
Yeah, it definitely is a sign. It is the sign that cheers us up during the dark time, and we need that. Otherwise, it would be continuing depression, right? It's it's necessary, and it's also, if you think about Sag, you know, it's it has a good spirit. It helps. It cheers us up, and we do need that. And that is why Jupiter comes into place. You know, Jupiter helps people. It is very generous in nature, and that's actually what the season does. It's just helping us. It reminds us that lights will turn back again, that things will get better, and this is a quality that such people carry into them, that everything will get better and better, and light will turn back again. That is why they are the most optimistic people I know, we can say.
Yeah, it's definitely a sign linked to optimism. I think so much of it is really because of Jupiter.
Yeah.
Um, and we're going to get more into depth of Jupiter a bit later on. um, but yes, it's just so interesting. And I also feel like to fully understand Sag, we also need to understand Libra and Scorpio. I mean, like in any season, you kind of need to understand all the three signs for the season itself to make sense. And the autumn seems to be a big season where, justice is at play in
Mm-hmm.
different types of roles. And we really started with Libra, which is the archetypal sign of justice. um, and it's
Yes.
where we have the first balancing out act. It's like, okay, let's stand up for our rights, let's do the right thing. What does it mean? What does fairness mean? And then in Scorpio, where I guess it's a bit more dark, and where the Mars is ruling, Scorpio is oftentimes about, you know um you did this, so, or like, you did this to me, so you deserve this back. Like, that's the evening out of Scorpio. Like, um that's why people, it's associated with revenge sometimes, because sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
feels, oh, okay, if I suffered because of you, you deserve to suffer because of me. Or like, if we do this together, like, arm for arm, hand for hand, eye for eye type of thing.
Yes.
Yes.
And also, if we want to make this connection, Jupiter was also used as a natural significator for judges
Yes.
and for, what's ethically, morally correct. And we will talk about it later, I guess, but if you take the sextile between Jupiter and Libra, that is where they meet.
Mhm.
They both care so much about what is correct, what is right, and how to evaluate situations. Although Jupiter is maybe more positive and less objective than Venus and Libra in general. Um, because obviously Libra has that Saturnian component since it's the exaltation of Saturn. So they really come together for this reason. And but generally Jupiter, as we said, has this obvious optimism that changes the situation.
Yes, and then I feel like Sag really comes in as this reminder of, like, especially, after Scorpio, which is a fixed water sign, of
Yeah.
like, hey, let's do this differently. Like, reality is changeable. Everything is a lot more malleable than you think it is. And what is usually the most important thing to have during a dark time, like, it's the light at the end of the tunnel. It's this little faith you have to have. And that's Sagittarius that comes in and is like, hey, it all starts with a new belief, a new way of seeing things, of believing something as different as possible. And then, Capricorn comes in, it and it becomes more of a grounded plan, and more action oriented. And the Jupiter signs are really more about the beliefs and the faith that we hold to reform our world,
Yes,
and
that
how
is
that is
indeed
really important. Yeah, I mean, like, it starts from there. Like, it starts from an idea.
that is indeed a good point, because for our listeners, it's important to know that Jupiter is also the archetypal natural significator of also religion, faith, beliefs. all of characteristics which Sag represents. And it might, that is the thing about Sagittarius and Jupiter, is that they believe in things so much, even though it's not necessarily the reality of facts. For example, Sag is just waiting and wishing for light to come back, but actually you still have to wait for 3 months of winter, which is, it's actually colder. It's, there is more light, but it's still colder. So in a way, it is more of a moral function. It is not necessarily a realistic evaluation of situation. And I think that this is the polarity between Jupiter and Mercury.
Definitely,
Mercury would
yeah.
say, like, you still have 3 months of cold. What are you happy for, But Sag is like, no, man, at least, I mean, we have the cold, but at least we have more light. So that is the spirit we need, and it's more of a human function rather than an objective reality. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. And in a way that is also kind of the downside of Sag, that there kind of almost is no downside. That's like the downside of Sag.
Yeah,
Because
not wanting to see the downsides.
exactly. Because again, so many people associated with this, happy-go-lucky sign, and it's with hope and faith, but that actually sometimes makes it hard to actually see the reality and be realistic about things. And I obviously get where it comes from, because it's like, okay, we've been through like a harsh, Libra and Scorpio season, and now we get a little bit of faith, like, come on. I totally get it. We need that. And at the same
Exactly.
time, it can stand in the way of really seeing things clearly or checking the facts. Sagittarius is often a sign that really believes in like the lived experience of things, which I don't want to negate. That's a super super duper important aspect of it. And actually many times, the crazy people with the crazy ideas are the ones that end up changing the world. But at the same time, Sagittarius can also, despite being a malleable sign, be rigid about their beliefs
Yeah,
and idealistic.
dogmatic. They are
Totally, yeah,
dogmatic.
totally. Like, just maybe the signs that are like, oh, well, if you would just have a positive mindset, you could just change everything. And it might be true to an extent, but it's worth also checking the facts and also staying in reality, which,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why we need Capricorn afterwards.
Actually, like, this is an example that just came into my mind, but I was listening this podcast of this person that was coaching. It was a, lifestyle coach and stuff.
Mhm.
And he was saying that it is very difficult to coach very rational people, because people that lack of criticism, that could be Sag, if you say something to them with a positive vibe, like, believe in this, do this, they will believe you, because they are people with so much faith, and they will do it, and it will likely work. But if you have people that tend to over rationalize everything, they will find a rational excuse to not do what you're telling them to do. So it will be more difficult to coach these people. And that made me so laugh, because it is really the Jupiter Mercury polarity. Like, Jupiter just like, okay, I trust you, I have faith in you, I will trust your method, I will try. And Mercury would be like, I want to try to contest, to debate your method, because I don't trust you really. So it is really like the polarity of belief and faith compared to critical thinking and like over rationalization, I would say.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, personally, I really can feel this dynamic because I have a Gemini moon opposing Mercury in Sagittarius in my chart.
Yes,
So it's a constant I don't want to say battle, but it is kind of a battle
it
between
is.
my, own mind and the beliefs and the facts and the faith and the emotions and all of these things. And also a bit harsher because it's in my second and eighth house, so sometimes
Indeed.
not so clearly for me to see it myself. But yeah, I can just see so much of my own archetypal, yeah, polarities really in this dynamic of, Mercury and Jupiter being really present and both of them doing their thing. And yeah, but like in a way, I feel like the best what I can do is actually just learn how to hold both polarities, to really actually expand and be like, okay, well, can I hold both of them at one time and not feel like I need to either decide for this way or that way, which might be the adaptiveness and of, the mutable signs to be able to do that.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
Indeed, indeed.
which really is, I mean, I feel like the example I just made already kind of signified the Gemini and Sagittarius opposition.
Yeah, and these examples are really useful to explain you why Mercury is in detriment in Sagittarius. But actually, maybe this episode will be a little bit faster. I don't know, never say never. But it's because it doesn't have exaltations. It just have a detrimental planet. So in a way, really Sagittarius is all about optimism and having faith and having wish and thinking about what is right and what is not right. So
Yeah,
it is funny. And I think that, you know, talking about the polarity between Jupiter and Mercury is really the main topic.
it is the main topic. And again, I think we already discussed this in the Gemini or the Virgo episode, but the Jupiter and Mercury polarities are really the less difficult ones to handle if you would have them in your chart.
But they are the most difficult to understand
They are the most
when
difficult to understand for sure.
when you first approach astrology. Yes.
Definitely, definitely.
Because it's not like a bold tension and like a defined difference, for example, as in Moon, Saturn, Mars, Venus. It's way different.
That's way different, yeah. Because Jupiter and Mercury are so much about the how we think and perceive the world. And even that in itself is very individual and hard to sometimes understand and grasp because we just have our own perception. It's hard to really understand someone else's perception of things.
Yeah,
So that's why that polarity is in a way so individual, how it shows up in people's lives. Because again, it's so much about, yeah, really perception. I think that's the biggest word, like word we can put on both of these. Perception in different ways, maybe Sagittarius more on like the beliefs that we have. But it's both about like thinking patterns and like patterns all over the place with Mercury anyways. Um
that is definitely true because Mercury and Jupiter are all about which glasses do you want to wear today? The glasses of objectivity or the glasses,
yeah.
the rose-colored glasses? uh, so yeah, it is all about the perception of reality, and it is something crucial to human nature, and that is why we have astrology that has to represent this human characteristics.
Yes, and then you also have Mercury, which is such a trickster, really adapting constantly. So, and again, all the Jupiter and Mercurial signs are mutable signs. So they are also the most okay signs with constantly playing around with these things and also being like, okay, yeah, experimenting, yeah, and also being like, okay, what happens if I put on these glasses today and tomorrow the other ones?
Exactly, because you know that's actually a good point, because they are the most flexible signs, so they can experiment different approaches. And I think that it is inevitable for every human being to experiment different views and different ideas throughout our life. You know, it's pretty normal for a human to change opinion or change way with the way we think about stuff and reality. And in general, I think it's the easiest thing to grow and to change.
Yes, for sure. And also so necessary for our own growth process. And when we talk about growth, I mean, that is definitely a Jupiterian topic, since Jupiter is the biggest of the 7 inner planets. and
Yes,
and it's also often linked to expansion. I feel like that's like the Jupiter word that you hear, like, oh,
the Jupiter
expansion,
word.
expansion. Big Jupiter word for the biggest planet, biggest
That is
inner
true.
planet. And what I also want to talk about, and that is because, Jupiter is ruled by Sagittarius and Pisces. So we have all these, things, but I also want to talk about the maybe not so fun sides of Jupiter. And
Definitely.
and that is because every planet has it. And that is when, expansion can become very hard, especially when sometimes we don't feel ready, or when we are forced to, um, it feels like this thing where I'm remembering with a friend, that was years ago, but we talked about, where we wanted to go and like our dream realities and all these things, and how it's not happening. And then I asked her, but like, wouldn't it be completely overwhelming if right now you would have that? Like, wouldn't you just not be able to handle it, and you would like probably ruin it? So that's what I'm thinking of, like the expansion process. Sometimes expanding things can be overwhelming. Like, imagine if you're making a very low income, all of a sudden you get rich. Actually, there are quite a lot of people, that win the lottery and they're completely overwhelmed about what to do with a huge amount of money they suddenly have, or
Indeed.
all these things. So expansion itself is not always the most comfortable thing that can happen. And in a way, Jupiter can really force you. I mean, Jupiter is so much about truth and having true faith and true beliefs. And sometimes Jupiter first takes away so it can expand your perception, so that you can really get what you desire in a way that you will be able to receive it. And that in
Yes.
itself can be painful and not so easy.
I think that I want to connect this with the seasons, because Mercury ruled signs are the other two mutable signs. So we have Gemini and Virgo. Gemini and Virgo actually prepares us for the darkest part of the season. So they prepare us for the loss. And Jupiter prepares us for gaining and expanding and receiving something. So it is intrinsic in the nature of Jupiter that if you want to expand something, or if you want to begin something new, it means that you have to lose something. And yeah, it does make sense, because also in the season you're welcoming light, but you're inevitably losing the darkness. And it is kind of basic philosophy or just rational thinking, but I do think that these two planets in their polarity really represents that.
It does, yes. And also how oftentimes we really have to first believe that it's possible. We have to truly be able to think about it in our minds, Like, I don't know how it is for you, but definitely for me, sometimes when I was really reflecting on things, I was like, I don't think I truly believe that I deserve to have this. Or things like
Uh,
that. Or just things you never think about. And you're like, yeah, actually, I never thought about it. That I never thought that would be possible. Because oftentimes, you know, we just grow up and we're influenced by our environments and things and our parents, and then, you know, you meet another person, you're like, oh, I didn't know this way of living was even possible. Like, you live
yeah,
that way, you just things
yeah.
like,
I mean, actually, I can see that so perfectly in my life because I moved abroad when I was 18, and I wasn't really thinking of how life would be. Like, I was obviously thinking of expanding my possibilities and grow as a person, but then when I moved abroad, I just realized that the life I had back in Switzerland, in my home country, was dying. Because I was beginning to build a new life abroad. And I had to face the fact that my social life in Switzerland, what I had in Switzerland, is inevitably changing. So, to begin something new in a new country, you have to lose the familiarity and the familiarity with your own country. So you inevitably lose a part of yourself to create a new one that is bigger.
yeah.
And yeah, I really see that.
Yes, and also Jupiter has so much to do with our establishments, and in a way it actually has a lot to do with our societal structures. I know that's something that is associated a lot with Saturn, and it's definitely also a Saturn part, but you know,
It's very
the
Jupiterian.
Jupiter and Saturn work together in tandem anyway, just like Venus and Mars do. So Jupiter has a lot to do with the you know, the governmental structures and like the
Exactly.
beliefs that are around that really influence how we do things. And I mean, like the national holidays that we celebrate, all of that is Jupiterian.
Yeah, because like Jupiter wants the common good, and that should be
Yeah.
the definition of a government, trying to provide for common good for your country.
Yes, and
That's
that's,
what the government
yeah.
should be. So it's very Jupiterian.
Yes, and it's based on what? A belief system that they think is correct.
Mhm.
So here we have it again. And I also wanted to talk about Jupiter, which is oftentimes associated with luck as
Mhm.
well. And that is, first of all, in one way, because we have something in ancient astrology called like the joy of planets. So there are houses in which the planets have their joy, you could say.
Mhm.
And Jupiter has its joy in the 11th house. And the
Yes.
11th house is exactly associated with these things like the
Groups of people.
exactly groups of people, the people you meet, benefactors, like the people you meet that propel you into you know, a new life direction, the people that are like, oh, I would have not gotten this job if I didn't know this person, that type of thing, where you
Indeed.
just feel extremely lucky in that way. And oftentimes luck in that sense, it's more of a preparation meets opportunity type of thing.
Indeed, I
um
love that. I love that quote. I mean, it's not a quote, but it's a fact. Sometimes it's just a matter of being lucky when people encounter a situation and they just grab the opportunity.
yeah,
And it actually, like, you have to be lucky to, see that that opportunity is good for that moment in time. For example, people that at the time when Bitcoin were created, they just bought a bunch of them. This is kind of like one example of that, or when YouTube just started and YouTubers that started just they just grabbed the opportunity. And that was lucky because if you begin right now, it's way harder to get a public, but if you're the first one, it's way easier.
definitely, yeah. In a way, you have to also have the capacity to receive, which you have to believe in. And then yeah, it's in a way, it's like really trusting that you are at the right place at the right time for whatever you're meant to happen in your life. Like I don't know, I can't predict that. And that is also why Jupiter is a planet that grants protection. In a way, Jupiter is really associated with protection, where it can really feel like a shield to maybe bad experiences, or the things where you're like, oh wow, I could have went through this, but like something in me, like it didn't make it happen, and I'm so glad it didn't happen. That sometimes can be a very Jupiterian experience in that way. And it's actually also, if you look at like why it's associated with protection, because Jupiter in the sky, the planet Jupiter, also protects us from asteroids. It
Oh,
literally protects a shield. Wait, you didn't know that?
I didn't know actually.
Oh, okay. No, because I had it from Diana's course when I took the Jupiter course in the beginning of this year.
That's amazing. That's lovely.
I had basically a Jupiter perfection year the last year of my birthday. Now I'm in a Saturn year, so I was learning a lot
No,
about
I'm kidding.
Jupiter. No, but I was learning a lot about Jupiter, and I felt like when I was connecting to Jupiter and thinking about many things in my life where I was like, this could have went so south and it didn't, and how I just felt such a gratefulness, because it really felt like, wow, like Jupiter was protecting me all along. Like you kind of really take it for granted if you don't really.
But it is not. It is not. I know, right?
Jupiter, in a way, shields us oftentimes from things that can be unfortunate, and we don't even know, like we don't even realize.
And that is actually the principle of love, right? It is
Mhm.
supposed to protect you as a civilian.
It's oftentimes a very big like inner shield for us. It is actually our faith and our hope. I mean, how oftentimes do you hear like, faith, like hope is the last thing that dies? Well,
Yes,
it's because it really can keep you going in the dark time. And that's exactly what Sagittarius is about. Like you need that faith and hope and that belief in this light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how tiny it is, but it can really keep you going when everything else fails to keep you going, essentially. Sag is the first mythical sign that we meet,
hmm
because we haven't really met a mythical sign before. And when I say mythical, I mean it doesn't exist in that sense, because it's a centaur.
Yes, yes. It's not something that we can see in our life. It's not an animal. It's not a human. It's not an object. It's a mythical creature. Yes.
Yeah, because it's like half man and half horse, with a bow and an arrow in his hand. The story represents like the liberating process of moving from the, temporary physical reality into the heavenly spiritual world. It's the arrow that
hmm
symbolizes the higher consciousness, the higher perspective and viewpoint, where we can see a new purpose unfold.
Indeed. I really like that.
Exactly. And the other mythical sign is also Aquarius, and technically also Capricorn, or at least the old sign of Capricorn, which was the sea goat when it was still called like that, but we will definitely get much more into that in the Capricorn episode.
Indeed.
But like in the modern times, technically just Sagittarius and Aquarius are the both mythical signs. Okay, so now we'll get into the comparison of the other signs. And we already talked a lot about Sagittarius and Gemini, which are the opposing signs. And we have Virgo and Pisces. But before we get in there, I also just want to say that, like all mutable signs, which are also the other ones, right? So Sag can struggle with being flighty and not fully committed, and only in love with the constant change, not wanting to ever settle and commit, and can often believe that the grass is greener. And for Sag
That
especially,
is true.
yeah, especially for Sag, freedom is a very big value for them. And the downfall is that, sometimes they cannot really integrate the knowledge and turn it into wisdom, which really is like, in a way, uh, the evolution of Sagittarius, if you want to put it that way. Um, because they're at their best when they can turn the knowledge they have into wisdom and then use it for, the service of greater good, because they really like to be um, humanitarian in that way. And this can sometimes lead, them to be know-it-alls without any real data or evidence, and can also lead,
Yes.
yeah, can also, in worst case, sometimes lead to, God complexes, and, when faith overrides or it's not balanced out with logic. So, they discovered that physical freedom means nothing if the mind is bound by restrictions and conditioning that are not really true to the heart. Yeah,
Uh,
so let's compare Virgo and Sagittarius then.
yes. So it's very interesting because I think we largely talked about the comparison between Gemini and Sagittarius, but obviously Virgo is in another Mercury ruled sign, although it is very different than Mercury itself, than Gemini itself, because I would say that Virgo is a more functional version of Gemini, and it's also a more realistical version of Gemini, being an Earth sign. And I think that for this reason, it is if Jupiter and Sagittarius have the as something in common, that they are both related to beliefs and thinking and opinion, Virgo is really more about the facts. So the differences between Virgo and Sagittarius are not only that Sagittarius is over optimistic, but it's also that Virgo says to Sag, hey, I love your ideas, but how are you going to put this all in practice? Like, you're missing a plan. You're missing rationality. You're missing, realistic consideration. I have a super close Sag friend, and when he was 18, he told me that he had a plan to travel the world with his motorbike, and he said that he calculated 5 years in advance the budget he needed to travel, and he calculated everything, but actually none of this was really useful. He missed a lot of stuff to consider, like extra money in case something goes wrong, or and this is really the sad vibe that can highlight the contrast with Virgo.
Yeah, in a way, it just feels like the opposition, but like on steroids, because
Yes.
Virgo is like, exalted Mercury, so super strong Mercury, and in that case also fall of Jupiter.
Yes.
So yeah, Virgo is much more down to earth and science based, if you want to put it that way, and Sagittarius is a lot more philosophical. It's a sign that is like, let's gather around the campfire and talk about God and the world
Yes.
type of thing. And Mercury would rather, I don't know, be in a lab and analyze things. But they're probably also people that can have great discussions in this way. Um,
Yes.
as long as, both of them are willing, which mutable
Yeah,
signs are more willing to see the.
that is true. That is true. It's way easier to create a debate that is respectful towards the other between mutable sign. Definitely not something possible with fixed signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, if we instead compare Pisces and Sag, that are both Jupiter ruled signs, I think that, what's the main difference between them is that, Pisces is a feminine sign and it's a water sign, and it's also the exaltation of Venus. And, if Sag precedes the light that will come after the winter solstice, Jupiter in Pisces precedes the light, the real light that will come after the spring equinox. So, it is way more wishful and like way more full of hope and beliefs than Sagittarius. Like
Yeah.
it's like Sagittarius in steroids under this point of view, but then he does this more feminine approach. It's more compassionate and supporting towards the other on an emotional level. And it is, yeah, it is more slow. And I would describe, for the fact that Pisces is also the exaltation of Venus, I would describe Pisces with the word grace.
For
I
sure,
think
yeah.
it's very suitable. And you know, Sag just wants to go around with its own mess and explore and explore and just expand and go and explore, whereas Pisces is more in tune with the emotions of other people.
Yeah. Yeah, because Venus is much more relational. It cares much more about the other people. It carries much more
Yeah.
empathy in that sense. And that doesn't mean that Sagittarius does not care about other people, but it cares much more on a belief-based way. And the
Yes,
way that
indeed.
the way that it explores things. And like when I think of Sagittarius, actually oftentimes I think of The Hobbit, and when he like
What?
steps,
Okay.
because like what, no, just the scene where he steps out and he's like, I'm going on an adventure. I'm just like, that's so
Oh,
sad for me.
yeah, it is so sad. I do agree.
And Pisces is much more about
I will let
wanting
myself
everyone to
flow.
just have a good time, you know.
Yeah, it's more just like I will follow the flow. I will go with the flow and see where life will bring me, because I have faith that things will go for the correct reason. And I'm just going to make sure that the universe does not feel pain, and I will try to dampen the suffering of humans. type of
Yeah, yeah,
type of
it's
Jupiter.
yeah, because it's like both benefics are doing extremely well there. So that's why sometimes Pisces can just be a bit too naive with certain things, because that's what
Yes.
happens if you have both
Too much
benefics doing
good.
well.
Too
Yeah,
much
it's too
good.
much goodness, too much goodness. Like, and that can um sometimes make it too easy to trust things, because if you just believe that the world is good, and I don't want like I don't want to say it's not, but like just the
Yeah.
reality of things is a bit different. And sometimes, and I mean, that's generally what both, again, Jupiterian signs can struggle with. But I would definitely say that Pisces is a bit more naive in that sense than Sagittarius, because Sagittarius still is, half horse, half man. It's very aware of harsher conditions in the battle between the inner beast and the philosopher, like these things. So that's definitely
Yeah.
like the main difference between both Jupiter rule signs. And we're going to find out more about that when we talk about the Pisces episode. And yeah, Sag is more philosophical and Pisces is more spiritual. That's where
Yes,
put.
indeed. It's like follow the beliefs, follow the feelings type of things. Follow
Yes.
the beliefs, follow your gut. Yes.
Yeah.
Your intuition. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, we love all signs.
We
Please don't
love,
take any
yes,
offense.
indeed, indeed, indeed.
Um,
So I think it's time to compare the fire signs.
yes. Ooh.
Ooh.
Fire sign trio. It's so fun because now we're gonna be completing all the trios, Like we're starting with Sag and now we're gonna do
Oh,
because we only have three signs left, right? So we're gonna do all the
yep.
trios. And I mean, the fire trio is so interesting because it is the starting. I mean, Aries is the starting point. And in a way, if we look at fire, it really feels like Aries is that initial spark, that, cardinal fire, the fire that starts something. And then Leo, the fixed fire, is the flame that holds, that is shining bright. And Sag,
Doesn't want to be turned off.
yeah, doesn't want to be turned off. And Sag is like the fire, the uncontrollable fire that just burns, that can spread and
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, but this is
change.
like unresolvable case of fire that will burn down the whole woods. Which, I
And
mean,
yeah,
actually, if you think about it, it's a perfect analogy because that's how Sag feels in the inside. But
yeah.
I always had the issues with this analogy because if you think about it, it's just spreading a fire. It's not nice. And Jupiter is more nice, usually.
It
But
is, but I'm also thinking of just, even if you make a fire, it is in a fixed place and you put it like that, that is still also mutable fire because it is constantly changing depending on, if you put more wood or if you take out the wood, um, these types of things. Of course, in a way, Sagittarius would also be the wildfire because one sign has to be the wildfire.
no, because it's the most free one that
Exactly.
expands and goes everywhere. So I can but I like to specify that this is purely a metaphor because such
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
want to arm people with this wildfire.
Definitely, definitely. I think it's just the when you think about, the element and the quality, it's like you would associate it with something like that. And that most definitely, like so many things in astrology, is often more symbolical type of language that
Yes.
can, is also in correspondence with the reality of the world, but can also just be representative of some sort of like archetype that we're feeling. Because it feels like, like when you feel like, oh, I have that inner fire burning inside of me, I can't contain it. That's maybe the closest, you would get to it in a symbolical way.
Yes, indeed. Obviously.
Yes, and this is really also why, Aries and Leo are much more, it's like much more a directed and focused fire energy in that sense. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because we have in Aries we have Mars, which is a very directive sign in that sense, and the exaltation of the sun. And then in Leo we have the sun, which is the immovable star at the center of our universe. So
Yes.
of course Aries and Leo are much more physical when it comes to creation, and the fire element has so much to do with creation in itself. That's probably also because Aries and Leo are things that really exist. I mean, like an Aries and a Leo are animals that actually exist, and
True.
Sagittarius not. Like Sagittarius is much more about the creation from within than
Yeah,
the
from the
physical
ashes
creation.
as well. The creation in the middle of the desolation of fall, you
Yes,
know?
definitely. Definitely. Yeah, the transformative quality of, like, it takes the transformation from Scorpio, like full circle in that way. This is the fire sign trio. Do you have
Yeah.
anything to add to that?
Well, actually, no. But I think that it's correct to mention, as for the other signs, the organ rulership, right? And I mean, it is very interesting because we have a centaur as the ruler of like as the symbol of Sagittarius,
Hmm.
and it rules over the eeps and the tides. And when I imagine like a centaur, I really see like muscles like legs and like legs. I don't I when you look at horses in general, like they have such a beautiful and strong legs. So
Yeah,
it just
definitely.
it just makes me laugh, the analogy. It also represents the liver and the in general the blood circulation. In fact, if you think about the temperaments, Jupiter rules over the sanguine temperament and it rules over the liver as well.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about, Shakira hips don't lie.
Yeah, that is very Sag like.
And how it's yeah, oftentimes, when we feel stuck, it's so important, like so much gets actually stuck like between our hips, like so much energy gets accumulated
Ah, the
there.
energy. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, and it gets
Sorry.
yeah, look, I said it weirdly, but
No,
no, it's
I'm just messing with you.
no, it's okay, because I'm also thinking about the exercises that I'm doing sometimes, like the TRE exercises, which stand for trauma and tension release exercises. And in a way, you basically place your legs and you move them upwards, and they start shaking naturally. And it starts shaking from the hips onwards. Like, it sounds
Nice.
weird if I say it, but really I'm not doing anything. Like, my body naturally starts shaking. So it makes a lot of sense that, the hips would be such a like a mobile part, something that can really, move a lot, which
Yeah, I mean, it's like you walk with them.
yes, you walk with them. And it's so interesting. Oftentimes, depends on where you go, but for example, I really noticed that I guess, here in Switzerland, people are maybe a bit more rigid in that sense. So you don't really see a lot of women like really shaking their hips when they walk. But then go to a country like Brazil, and you feel like, oh, all the women are really,
Mhm.
shaking their hips when they're walking. And then I also noticed when I walk, the difference between when I'm walking in a much more stiff way and when I really take the time to move my hips when I am
Yes,
walking, and
indeed.
it's so much better. Like, it's seriously so much better.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about belly dancers, which is a bit
Yeah.
different, but
Well, it definitely also has to do with the
yeah,
hips, not just the
yeah,
belly, but yeah.
exactly. I mean, obviously. Okay, so I think we mentioned everything, right?
Yes, I think
That
we
was
mentioned
so nice.
everything. It was nice. And yeah, the next sign is going to be Capricorn. I think
So
something we're also both excited about with our many Capricorn placements.
indeed, it's going to be like as the same vibe of the Scorpio episode, we are invested.
Yeah, we're very
Scorpio
Scorpio,
Capricorn
Capricorn.
placements.
Totally, totally. Lots of sextiles between our charts. So
Oh, yes. So see you next episode. Thank you for
see you.
listening. Bye.
Bye.